How do you create compelling characters? Getting the character from your mind onto the page isn't always easy. In this video, I'm going to talk about a unique but surprisingly effective technique that shows you how to create character profiles so you can get inside your characters' heads. What's up, guys? My name is Michael Laurent with Author Level Up, helping you write world-class stories better and faster. If you're new here, consider subscribing and click that little bell, ding ding ding, to get helpful writing videos every week. And in this writing video, we're talking about how to create character profiles. I personally don't believe in creating extensive character sheets. I've done over 30 plus novels, and I can tell you that your time is best spent writing, not planning characters. Good characters happen on the page in real time as you're writing. Instead, let me offer you a cool shortcut that you can use to get inside your characters' heads with minimal effort, and that's character archetypes. Explore it in the book Heroes and Heroines by Tami Cowden, Caro Lafever, and Sue Viders, and a follow-up book, Fallen Heroes by Tami Cowden. These are criminally underrated books that made a huge difference in how I view my characters. Have you ever wondered why some characters resonate with readers over others? Why is it that some characters just tap into readers' psyches? The authors of Heroes and Heroines offer a thought-provoking argument by citing the work of Carl Jung. Jung was a famous psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who posed a lot of theories, a popular one being the archetype. Jung believed that humans have a collective unconscious and, quote, deposits of the constantly repeated experiences of humanity, a kind of readiness to reproduce over and over again the same similar mythical ideas, end quote. These personalities are called archetypes, and they're the backbone of heroes and heroines. The main point in the book is that every character you create falls into one of the 16 major archetypes, and if you can understand the archetype, you instantly understand the character. You understand their background, their needs, their motivations, strengths, weaknesses, and anything else that you need to know in the context of your story. In other words, just refer to the archetype because most of the work is already done for you. If you've never seen archetypes before, then it could be easy to dismiss them. For example, if I told you that Harry Potter was a hero type, Ron Weasley was a sidekick type, and Hermione Granger was a bookworm type, then you would understand immediately what I was talking about. But then your mind might draw a conclusion that you shouldn't write characters like that because it would be easy to fall into stereotypes. But you would be wrong. If you delved into each archetype further and analyzed them through the lens of a psychologist, then you would find a lot of really interesting material in terms of what motivates them. Harry is the way he is because his parents died when he was a baby, and he's abused by the Dursleys. He takes charge of his life. Ron is an awkward kid who doesn't quite measure up to his siblings. And Hermione is a mudblood, half wizard, half muggle, and therefore has to be smarter and work harder to prove herself as a capable wizard. So archetypes aren't rules. They're also not stereotypes. They're just starting points. Every character is different, and you can have two characters that live in the same archetype but are completely different. Just like you can have two people who have identical backgrounds and upbringings but are completely different in real life. The book explores 16 archetypes and provides a couple of key items for each. A sketch of the demeanor and attitude of that archetype as well as their strengths and weaknesses, their possible family background and childhood, different styles or flavors of the archetype, if you will, and typical occupations that the archetype might have. Now, time out for a minute. An important thing to remember is that an archetype does not dictate the actions a hero takes. An archetype provides insight into why a character does what they do. Now, the book even offers tips on pairing archetypes together, like if you have a hero and a sidekick. Now, if you can't tell already, I love this book. Not so much because of the archetypes, but because of what it stands for. Let's talk about one of the male archetypes, which is the chief. According to the book, a chief likes to be in charge. He's only happy when he's fixing problems. He shoots from the hip and never has 100% of his plans figured out, but they always work out in the end. Examples of a chief would be Captain Kirk from Star Trek and Don Corleone from The Godfather. Two totally different characters, but they share many of the same traits. A chief is organized, motivated, and confident, but sometimes comes on a little too strong, especially with females. This type of character prefers action over deliberation and needs a team of people who can balance him. He might be a born leader, or maybe he's had to fight for everything he's had in his life. Good occupations for a chief would be a CEO, surgeon, or even a newspaper editor. He likes to be in charge. The book goes way more in depth into this archetype, but you can already see how knowing about a character like this can help you enhance them on the page. The female equivalent of a chief is the boss, who has the same virtues and flaws as a chief, but tailored more for a heroine. For example, the boss, like the chief, gets things done. She's all about results and won't let anyone stand in her way. She's confident, dynamic, super smart, but sometimes her mouth or her temper can get her into trouble. Good examples of a boss would be Miranda from Sex and the City, Princess Leia in Star Wars, or Mulan from the Disney movie Mulan. The boss may struggle with balancing a career with love or motherhood, or trying to make a name for herself in a field of all males. She could be a tomboy or not, but ambition drives her. Like the chief, despite her sometimes aggressive nature, she's protective of the ones she loves and will do anything for them. The archetype tells you everything you need to know about writing a strong female heroine in this vein. And if that weren't enough, Tami Cowden explores villain archetypes in her book Fallen Heroes, and there are villain archetypes that mirror the hero and heroine ones. For example, the tyrant archetype is the dark equivalent to a chief. A tyrant is a chief who probably had similar circumstances, but something forced him to the dark side. Voldemort is a great example of a tyrant. He's a wizard who had a lot of promise, but made some bad mistakes that drove him to evil. Darth Vader is another example of a chief who turns into an evil tyrant. On the female side, the archetype is called the bitch. Again, this archetype is a female who could just as easily make different choices and become a boss, but instead, circumstances drove her to become evil. The bitch archetype uses whatever means necessary to assert control and power over her situation. She's different from a tyrant primarily because of the way that she gets things done. Whereas a tyrant uses brute strength, she uses her cunning as well as violence. It's like the difference between Darth Vader and Maleficent. They're both rotten to the core, but their style of evil is different. Additional examples Cowden gives in the book of this archetype are Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians and the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. Practically any Disney female villain would meet this archetype, but that's just one set, right? So we could talk about the bad boy archetype, or we could talk about the spunky kid heroine archetype, or we could even talk about like the matriarch villain archetype. Every type of character is covered in these books. Every single one. In fact, there is so much more to explore in Heroes and Heroines and Fallen Heroes. But perhaps even more useful than the archetypes is the explanations the books give on how the archetypes pair with each other. For example, a chief is going to clash with a boss, but a professor archetype tends to get along well with the chief, because the chief is a big picture guy, but the professor is the detail guy who helps the chief achieve his goals. Perfect example of this is Captain Kirk and Spock. A chief and a crusader heroine archetype is an interesting combo. So the chief is assertive and headstrong, but the heroine crusader is willing to die for what she believes in, even if it means being a martyr. That's an interesting dynamic for a romance, isn't it? So when you think about the qualities that each archetype brings to the table and how they could work or not work with each other, then you have a recipe for character development and conflict all rolled up into a neat package already done for you. Personally, I find that character archetypes are better to use once you've started writing because you can tweak them and mold them to how you want. Because let's face it, you don't want to just take an archetype wholesale. You want to take it and then evolve it. I happened to find Heroes and Heroines as I was writing my first series, Moderation Online. I was about halfway through the first book in this series when I learned about the archetypes. And when I looked at my novel, I realized that all of the major characters fit neatly into one of the archetypes in the book. That's when the light bulbs went off for me. My personal philosophy about characters is that character development happens in real time on the page when you're writing. Sometimes we don't always know what to write, or maybe we need a helping hand in making the character more real. Archetypes serve that function. They're there for you whenever you need them. Your character sheets won't be. Most of the time, writers just use character sheets to understand how characters are before writing, but once they start the novel, the sheets become irrelevant. Archetypes give you accurate, ongoing support, so to speak. So as long as you understand that they're not rules and that they exist only to give you insights into why the characters do the things that they do, this can be an incredible superpower for you. You can grab your copy of Heroes and Heroines as well as Fallen Heroes via the links in the video description. And I wanted to let you guys know that this video has been sponsored by my book, How to Write Your First Novel, the stress-free guide to writing fiction for beginners. Don't make writing hard. Let's make it easy. So in this book, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of how to write your chapters, how to navigate the murky middle, and of course, how to beat writer's block. You can also grab your copy via the description below. And if this is your first time watching, be sure to subscribe and click that little bell to get notifications every time I have a new video.